Hello, listeners. Today we've got a rather interesting episode lined up for you. It can, in fact, be one word, which this topic is electricity. What is it? We live with it. It surrounds us. It has a profound influence on our daily lives. But what is it? To answer this question, we've got somebody who would be considered a semi-expert in the field. Vinod. He's been studying electricity and power systems for the better part of half a decade and is considered to be somewhat a professional in it. And he's always had interesting stories to tell, which is very fascinating, to say the least. But having said this, there are some things that I vaguely remember about reading about electricity from the physics textbooks of the CBSE, NCRT era. So in 2008, we were taught about what magnetism is, what a magnetic field is. And for the life of me, all I remember was Metallica's Death Magnetic, the album released around that time, 2008, if I was not wrong. And it had a coffin with the magnetic field. And I would like to plot out this part of it in the physics textbook only because of the reference to the Metallica's album. And they taught me some vague things about Ohm's law and, what a circuit is, what an open circuit is, closed circuit is. I don't remember any of it. And there are random terms that were thrown out: voltage, current, power, and they were used very interchangeably, and I still use them interchangeably. And I don't know what, if at all there is any difference to it, or if it's all just synonyms. But the more pressing question in popular narrative today, where I can't contribute to the conversation, is when they talk about energy systems and climate change. So I might know things that's broadly about climate change, what if it's real, if it's not, and all of that political rhetoric. But when it comes down to the science of it, I still don't know what it is and how it influences us. So Vinod, to start off with, let's address that question, which is definitely in the narrative right now. What is this whole 1.5 degrees Celsius? What is net zero emissions? How would you achieve net zero emissions? What is the cost involved? There is a narrative that enforcing such regulations on developing countries would actually push it backward because the rich countries have already, used this to the core. So can you just subtract the rhetoric and add some objective answers to these questions to start with?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that nice introduction. So a few things that you asked. One is the climate change. What is this 1.5 degrees Celsius and net zero emissions? And the casual dismissal of Ohm's law, which is Anna Sambaro for all electrical engineers. So very well. So anyway, I think most of us would be anyway familiar with Ohm's law and stuff. So this 1.5 degrees Celsius is the unit for global warming. So global warming, essentially the idea is the world's getting hotter and hotter, right? And the idea is to limit the increase in heat or the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And net zero emissions is because the emission, when we say emission, it is carbon dioxide or carbon, which is causing global warming. So it traps heat in the atmosphere and then heats the world, and then that causes ice caps to melt and the climate patterns shifting. And then you might have you suddenly see rain towards the midsummer, and then you're like, what on earth is going on? Why is it raining now? It is not supposed to rain, because 10-15 years ago you have not seen it that much. So, and it's kind of getting bigger and bigger, this challenge of tackling the varying patterns in climate. So that's climate change.
So is this also used interchangeably? Because look, climate change, I agree, it is very much real, but nobody's using global warming anymore. And you also mentioned carbon being the primary cause of global warming, wasn't carbon dioxide technically good for the plants, because the plants would take in carbon dioxide and then put out oxygen, and and what are greenhouse gases? Is it just carbon? Like, what is this? Like, again, like a lot of terms and jargons.
Yeah. So, trying to simplify, it's essentially all of these are interlinked and are used interchangeably. When global warming is used on a daily basis everywhere. So that's essentially the idea. Then you said about carbon dioxide is good for the world if there are enough plants. So there is more carbon dioxide coming out. Meanwhile, you're cutting trees as well. So deforestation is an issue. So again, it's the levels that's important. So it's more carbon dioxide than what is required for survival.
Okay. So, okay, agreed. So how does energy help in this 1.5 degrees?
Yeah. So even though every sector is responsible for this global warming, and there are talk about the mass production of cattle for beef, or that is also causing some level of global warming, right? Because it's breathing, right? And perhaps
methane.
this the whole veganism and that movement is directed towards that. But you asked energy sector; it is a major player because the energy that we get, the electricity that we get at our house, is made in power plants, which is spewing smoke, which you might have seen. The industry is spewing smoke, which is essentially carbon dioxide, right? And or some of carbon. So these are greenhouse gases, obviously, and then that causes warming. So energy sector, as I said, it's a major contributor because of all the coal power plants that you see, which has and then any other form of fossil fuels which you burn, like gas. When it's a gas, it's natural gas or oil. All this, when you burn it, generates smoke, and that the energy from that heating process is used to generate electricity, which we use. Electricity is just a medium, so that causes global warming.
So what is the realistic solution to this? What should the energy sector or other sectors be doing to tackle?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to understand the implications. I have heard a narrative where global warming, which means increasing in temperature, it can cause a perpetual lockdown. That means you can't get out simply because of the heat outside, which means you're locked inside AC compartments, which could be your house or your office, whatever, your entertainment center, but it needs to be air conditioned, right? So that's one dire consequence of global warming and climate change. The other one is this 1.5 degrees, which I think I did not answer properly. 1.5 degrees is the temperature before the industrialization. So, before industrial revolution, the rising temperature was somewhere around 1.2 degrees, something like that, which was much safe, but it is going towards 2.1 degrees or 2.0 degrees these days. So the idea is to bring it back down to 1.5 and keeping that as the threshold for the future. So obviously everything started from the industrial revolution where we started burning things more, yeah. And also the population increase, which is another cause. Now the net zero emissions is, it's fine if you burn, but you also try to, bring it down. Like there is carbon. So there is something called carbon capture technology as well. So you're always trying to match it. So ultimately net zero is, net zero carbon emissions. That's what net zero emissions mean. That's a major target according to the Conference of Parties or COP convention that happens every year.
Yes. So now let's, just for the ease of the listeners and me, now let's, for example, take up a thermal plant, which is burning coal to generate electricity or energy. How would you make a thermal plant net zero? What is this carbon capture technology? What is this like? What does it do? How can you make a thermal plant net zero? a net zero
To
plant
be honest,
with?
I don't know if you can make a thermal plant net zero. There are this carbon capture technology and storage is essentially, it's in the air. So, you pass it through a filter or some sort of equipment, which actually I have not seen anywhere. I mean, I have only read this. So the idea is that send that smoke through something and then capture the carbon through it. I don't know the details of the technology
And
and exactly how it works.
okay,
And then you,
okay. So basically, your solutions to the problem: one, carbon capture technology; two, clean
yeah,
energy. So if it's relatively straightforward, why don't we just use solar and wind and hydro and just get be done with it? Why is there so much? Why do countries have to meet every year? Why is it so complicated? Why is it so bureaucratic? If the answer is so simple, solar, wind, water, and sometimes nuclear, if it's considered clear, why is there so much confusion about all of this? Why these standards? Why such bureaucracy?
yeah, I think you asked me for a solution. This is part of the solution, yeah, that we can move towards renewable sources. And hydro being a major player, it has been there from very many decades. Solar and wind is option. But the obvious limitation is you don't have enough of it to power the world. The hydro, you have, you can count the number of dams in a country probably. So it's not that much. I mean, so it's still not enough. It's maybe like 10%, 20%. That's pretty much it. And then again, it's intermittent, as in especially solar and wind. Night you don't have sun, so you can't use it. And wind, it generates energy when the wind blows. That's pretty much it. So you can't ask the wind to blow in a certain way when you are switching on your washing machine, right? So obviously you would think about battery storage in between. So, but battery storage has its problems because it's an evolving technology. So the idea why battery storage is a problem is that the fuel, for example, the conventional fossil fuel, right? There's something called energy density. For example, if you say burn 1 kg of fuel, right, and then you get some amount of energy, you will need 30 kg worth of battery equipment to store that much energy. So battery equipment, you means, for example, lithium ion, or that's the best bet at the moment, which is so if it's a lithium ion battery, the equivalent is 30 kg. So that's why in aeroplanes we talk about more electric aircrafts. So aeroplane industry is one of the major sectors which is releasing so much of carbon air into the
Yeah.
atmosphere. That's dangerous. Now, can we make electric aircrafts? Yes, possibly. It needs battery, obviously. But, as I said, you can carry 1 kg of normal fuel in an aircraft. And then you can do all the calculation where, when you are landing, you only need this much fuel left. So the weight of the aircraft, everything is, calculated in such a way that you have a proper flight. But you need 30 times weight to be of that weight to be carried in an electric aircraft because of the energy density problem with respect to battery. So it is not straightforward swap between coal power plants or gas power plants with solar and wind. So it's like, when you want your dog to be acquainted with a certain kind of food, then you mix and match. You mix the one that it likes, and at some corner you add a bit of the one that you want the dog to eat. So it's kind of that into the system. You are injecting certain amounts of renewables here and there, and then there are a lot of technical difficulties around it, trying to overcome that, and then trying to attain the golden aim of net zero emissions.
Okay, just to push you a little bit on this battery technology, there is this narrative that electric vehicles or this battery technology causes more pollution in the long term than a conventional fossil fueled vehicle. Is there some truth to it? Are they talking in terms of pollutants, or are they talking in terms of the renewability of the technology in itself? What are they talking about when the other side of the narrative says it causes more harm than good in the long run?
No, I don't. Again, I don't have the data to back it. Um, but um, so essentially, this is idea. I mean, there are many talks about it. For example, the material needed for battery, which is extracted from the land areas in
Lithium.
Africa or something, and then you hear that children are used to do the job. So the question is, does that make battery technology worth it? But these are different questions. You know what I mean? Obviously, you wouldn't want to hear news about a child labor anywhere in the world. Um, and whether that's associated with the technology, no, the technology has nothing to do with it. It's the socio-economic conditions of that area. Similarly, it's the e-waste and all sort of stuff. How do you tackle that? That's a different question altogether again. But it's the same issue. I mean, how to deal with waste is the same issue. But does it pollute more? I don't think it pollutes more.
Okay. But see, this is very fascinating because in such a short span in history, like about 100 or 120 years, we've come from essentially Edison, inventing the incandescent light bulb to this fascinating thing in my hand that gives me information about everything in lightning fast speed. I mean, if Edison was or Tesla were to be alive today, they would themselves be shocked at where we've reached so far. Uh, so there's more than what just meets the eye about power systems. So, but what is crazy is also a lot of you have been absolutely retarded in this field, right? And the reason I ask you is because I've heard stories about Edison trying to electrocute an elephant, right? So let's address the elephant in the room
I saw that coming.
and talk a little bit about the history of electricity. I always found, or even when I talk to a lot of friends in the engineering field, we've always found Nikola Tesla to be a lot more fascinating a character than Edison himself. Find him cool. He has this vibe going for him, especially that photo of his, where he's sitting, in the, near the Tesla coil, and there's sparks flying everywhere, and this dude is just casually sitting and like reading a newspaper or something on the chair, and that's like the most badass photo one can be photographed with. So talk to me a little about that. Like, I mean, why electrocute an elephant in the middle of the street to prove a point, and what was he trying to prove, by the way?
Okay, that's going deep into electrical history, but something that I really like. Obviously, I've shared some snippets of stories from the past. Let me try to gather my thoughts on that. So, I think it goes a long way back in it. So, in the Greek time, they found something called amber. It's an orange color, solid, and then they rub it somewhere, and then they could see the human hair lift up. Just rub amber against silk.
We had a similar thing in school. It's to rub a Natraj scale, a plastic scale, against your sweater or your uniform or something of that sort, and then we would like shred very small pieces of paper on the desk, and then we would like make it move, and we would think that we're magicians.
Yeah, so
Is this the
essentially,
same thing that
it
the
was
Greeks did?
thought to be magic at first. And then later on, you could see, yeah, like you said, the glass rod and silk experiment, which could lift up paper. And then, so everything started out as an experiment. Nowadays, we see equations and then software programs to do all the electrical stuff, but it started out as an experimental science. I think it is towards the end of scientific revolution. That's Renaissance scientific revolution, and then you are entering the age of philosophy, or the actual industrial revolution and everything. So what happened was that people were doing these random experiments, and then there is this interesting inventions about this called Leyden jar, which is one of the first batteries. Wait, I think there is a BBC documentary by Jim Callels. I'll try to kind of give a capsule version of what that documentary is about, which is essentially the history of electricity. So, people try to create early batteries, and it was all static electricity, like the one when you rub glass rod against silk, that is static electricity. And then it was not continuous. You had a short burst of it, then you had to rub the Natraj scale again. So that's one problem. Then later on, someone found, oh, it could be continuous. So they stacked up piles of, this metal, which is dipped in chemicals, and then you could get a continuous form of electricity. And then, I mean, the thought was to show off more magic. There is this one story which I think I have told you, where somebody borrowed a dead body, which was, severed head, and then there's no head. And then what they did was they brought it into the Royal Society of London exhibition, where all the scientists and the elite people from Europe and Europe was sat there, and then they tried to connect one end of the electrode to the top of the spine, the other one through the anus of that dead body, and then the dead body sat upright when the current was passed, and they thought electricity was God; it could resurrect.
He was does it
Yeah,
resurrection.
so that sort of thing. So that's a thought process that went there. Then Danish scientist called Ørsted, he found out that it has connection with magnetism. So he passed electricity through a wire and then saw the compass move, and he saw like, hey, there is a connection between electricity and magnetism. And then there are people like Benjamin Franklin who try to think it is not a new thing. It's it's an invention. It's not an invention. It's rather a discovery, because you hear about God of thunder in all mythologies. So thunder is electricity essentially. So the lightning and thunder. So lightning is electricity basically. So they have kind of linked this to the natural phenomenon that electricity is. That was successful. Then the next thing that happened was to try to link it to magnetism, which Ørsted did. And Michael Faraday, what he did was he thought the other way around. He thought, oh, if electricity could cause magnetism, as proven by Ørsted by his experiment, then perhaps magnetism could cause electricity. And that's how Faraday thought, and then that's how we have the famous Faraday's laws of electromagnetic induction. And that's how the term came, electromagnetism.
Oh, so this is the thing they taught me in school. When you wrap a coil around something that's and then you pass current through it, it becomes a magnet. It becomes a super strong magnet.
This is the thing.
Okay, so they were not misleading me
in school.
Okay, they were not misleading me into the abyss.
Certainly
they were teaching
not.
me something of some value. Yeah. Okay. But yes, again, why electrocute the elephant?
To that point. So now that we have established electromagnetism is possible, and Edison came along, and you know him as the inventor of light bulb. So he wanted to sell his light bulbs.
Among many things.
Yeah,
among several things.
Yeah, just many things. So he wanted to sell his light bulbs, and then he wanted to generate electricity for that. And then he used this concept called direct current. So that's one form of electricity. And then once you generate electricity, it can be transmitted to a certain distance. And that's very important. He could only transmit it to a short distance within Manhattan. So which meant for him to serve people away from, say, 5 kilometers, he had to put up another generating station, which was not feasible. So he hired Tesla to solve the problem. And Tesla said, no, DC is not the way. AC is the way going forward. It's another form of electricity called alternating current. You might have seen the movie The Current Wars. And then that's just probably the premise for this Edison-Tesla conflict. And there is a third person called George Westinghouse, who was a proponent of AC, because I think when Tesla said no, AC is the way, Edison didn't like it, and then he fired Tesla. And then George Westinghouse, another businessman, he hired Tesla in his company, and then the war began. That is this current wars. Now there is a market for AC and DC. So the difference between AC and DC is DC can only be transmitted to a shorter distance, but whereas AC can be transmitted over longer distance thanks to the invention called transformer, which you see everywhere in the country. That an invention by Nikola Tesla. Magnetism was much more exploited in that AC technology, you could create something called transformer, and then which could step up the voltage and step down the voltage. Which when you step up the voltage, the current comes down, which means the losses comes down. That's pretty much it. And
Okay,
it's
see,
a very simple idea.
what is voltage then? If frequency is the number of
Cycles per second.
cycles in a second, what is voltage?
Voltage is the potential. For example, like the water in a reservoir. That's the potential. And the moment you open the door, it flows down. That flowing water is equivalent to current. The flowing water is current. The stored water is voltage. So it's essentially the potential to move something.
That's nice.
So you stand in the way of that water, it just moves you apart. It just blows you away, whatever. So that's
and that would be current. That would be current, basically. So I mean, a better analogy. There's a live wire in front of my house. That is voltage. When I touch it, and I get roasted, so it's not the voltage that screwed me; it's the current that screwed me.
Technically, yeah.
Okay.
But voltage makes that current move, so equally responsible for your roasting.
Okay.
Yeah, and that famous Ohm's law, which you nonchalantly dismissed, voltage is directly proportional to current.
Oh, it's directly proportional to current.
So essentially, the current wants to move, and voltage is ready to push it, but somebody is resisting. That's you. So if there is enough,
but in real life, who is resisting? Is there something called a resistor, no? Or something of that sort?
Yeah. So essentially, the Ohm's law is V is equal to IR, which means voltage is proportional to current. And that proportionality constant is called resistance, and that varies with temperature. So in this case, you are the resistance, because say the current through the wire wants to go to ground to close the circuit. Everything needs closure, current as well. So, but you're blocking it, say, and then if the voltage is powerful enough, it'll roast you. Otherwise, it'll be harmless. You might get a mild shock, and then you're like, nothing. So the potential to roast you is the voltage, and the current does the dirty work. It goes through your body and then kills every cell in your body. Yeah.
Okay. That's what killed the elephant, basically.
Yes.
Voltage and current.
Back to electrocution of elements. So there was this PR war to say one source of or one form of current is better than the other. And the Edison company decided to electrocute small animals first, dogs and horses and whatnot, and then moved up to elephant. But I'm not sure whether Edison did electrocute an elephant or it was a small movie made out of it. And then but anyway,
it was Topsy the elephant. It was produced by the Edison company. I don't think he himself electrocuted it.
I suppose, yeah. But the important thing is they also kind of projected AC as a alternate towards hanging in capital punishment, and they tried it on someone.
Okay.
And then he had a pain. Everyone witnessed a painful scenario,
death,
when this current was passed through that man who was convicted of something. And then he didn't die properly. And then the reporters who were present, they said it's worse than hanging. So,
wow. But do you not find this very fascinating, that the human beings have used electricity, like A, to try to resurrect a dead body, and then B, to kill a living body. It's super fascinating that when we stumble across upon a new technology or something new, we want to see if it can either resurrect us or kill us.
Yeah. Oh, the famous photograph that you mentioned was where probably Tesla kind of trying to prove that it's not harmful if used in right way, and that's when he sent all those high voltage thing through his body and nothing happened, but it was a clever trick. But he was able to
sitting and reading a newspaper,
safe.
Looking badass.
And then he got, and then they won, essentially AC won, and then the kind of energy that you see.
AC, but AC did not just win because of that PR stunt, right? It was undoubtedly the most effective way for transmission.
It was, yeah, because you see this you don't see a power station that often, do you? It's quite far away
Yeah,
from,
no,
the residential population or whatever. If it
true.
was DC, you would see a power station every other kilometer, and there will be smoke coming out of it. So just imagine that. So
Yeah.
undoubtedly, AC was a better.
And was there no way to mix it? Like, let's say have a DC power station and then use AC to do transmission?
No, there are different ways of mixing it, which is happening these days. But those are highly technical.
Okay.
Both AC
Okay.
and DC are used these days. Um,
Okay.
So, and there's something called power electronics, which enables this AC DC conversion. So it is
Okay.
mixed and matched. But you're right to ask that. Yeah.
Okay.
So the
But
electrocution
so
of
now,
elephant is just a PR stunt to win over
yeah, son.
DC. Long answer, short question.
But but when you told what was also interesting is when you spoke about Westinghouse, and then now we have JP Morgan on the other side. So right from its inception, this has always had an economic aspect to it. Funding it, making sure people have access to it, and so energy economics is, I think, a very important aspect of this ecosystem, which a lot of people don't understand. Policymakers need to understand energy economics a lot more, because like a city like Bangalore in 2022 having power cuts, there's no justification for it. Like, are we so the question then is, are we a power deficit country? Is it that we're not able to produce enough electricity? Or if we are producing electricity, is the transmission bad? Or if there is the last mile delivery bad? Like, why am I supposed to have power cuts in 2022 in a city like Bangalore? Like, why?
I think if you're talking about economics, so you need to understand how energy is perceived as a commodity. So it's usually kilowatt hour. That's 1 unit of energy. That's for which you pay 5 rupees, for example, in India, right? So what is it? It is kilowatt hour is a quantity of something that's it's at a given time. The price of that might change during different time periods in a day itself. In the night, nobody is using much, which means it's cheap. And then at what location? For example, if you live alone in a castle on the top of a hill, and just laying all the wires and everything to your location, just that. That's one. I mean, again, it depends on population and then density and everything. So essentially it's kilowatt hour at a given time and a location. And also the last one that you mentioned is blackouts. So at what level of supply security? This is
What is supply security?
Supply security is you don't have any power cuts, which means you have
Okay.
power all the time. Now, again, so let's get to the market first. So it's an inelastic demand. So, for example, if the price of apples are like 500 rupees per kilogram, then it's like might as well don't eat apple. Just leave it at that. Yeah, we don't need apple anymore. That's pretty much it. When it comes down to 50 rupees, then you buy, or when it comes down to 100 rupees, then you buy. Yeah. But electricity it's not that way. Even if it goes very high, people still need it for various purposes. There is a concept called electricity not supplied. Say, for example, the value of electricity supplied, at a certain time and location is, let's say it is, even if it's 20 rupees per unit, right? The energy not supplied might be, something like 350 rupees, because the industry, the economy, everything is dependent on it. So like how we discussed in economics episode, inflation could be caused by energy not supplied. So that's why it is an inelastic load. You can't flex it according to your need. Everyone needs it. That's why one of the lines that I wrote in my dissertation report, electricity is increasingly becoming one of the fundamental needs alongside air, water, food, and shelter. Yeah, and that's very important. So talking about markets, then there are wholesale markets where people are ready to sell, someone are ready to buy. But the tricky thing is electricity cannot be stored because of the things that we talk about, battery and the energy density. Electricity has to be consumed when it is produced. So there is a lot of, matching happening. And when does it happen? There is something called day ahead market. You plan today who is going to supply how much and who is going to buy how much, right? It's just like that, the same supply demand curve that you see in any other economics topics. Similarly, for energy, there is something called the supply demand curve. Many people who are ready to sell are called energy producers, and then people who buy, those are your distribution side network operators. You call it distribution companies, discoms in our country. So they are buying it from someone else. So there is a wholesale market in between, and that's how the market works. But the problem with the deficit that you mentioned is, one, definitely we need to generate more power, 100%. It's not enough for the country. And second, I think we have a world-class transmission system in our country, so that's safe. But the distribution system is messed up. So many problems there that needs cleanup. And then things like a fault occurring, like a tree branch falling on a line, which means it renders that part of the system, obsolete. Sometimes it could render a generator obsolete. So the security is that even if one generator goes off or if one line goes off, is there another way where you can transmit power to the household locations? Yeah. And that comes at a premium price, obviously, because the fault happens, and then, which means in our terms, the frequency drops. We need to maintain the frequency at 50 hertz. That is the supply and demand level that we need to match. If the supply goes down, the frequency goes down. If supply goes up, the frequency goes up. You need to kind of maintain it between 49.5 and 51.5, right? And you have very less time to respond to that loss of a generator or loss of a transmission line. And that's where the security of supply comes in, which means you need something called reserve, which is already, spinning, like some generator spinning, but not to its full capability. So when such a fault occurs, then you immediately inform them you need to increase the production, and they start increase the production pretty fast. That fast operations can only be achieved by something like gas or oil. A coal power plant will take 2 days to start up. You can't really wait for that. So
Yes.
gas and oil is pricey. So the security of supply, it comes at a premium. So that's why energy economics is one of the most important things, alongside all the technical stuff.
So
Yeah, go.
is that so? Now, let's say even if there's power and everything, the system's still not perfect. Once there's a blackout and when powers come back again, like you said, though if it's using gas or other fossil fuels apart from coal, there's still something like a half current. That's at least what we call it, half current. I mean, in the sense that there's the light bulb glows, but you can't turn on the water motor, or you can't turn on your geyser or your AC. So what is this half current? And then another weird thing is, wherever I've traveled, you have these different sockets.
Yeah.
To plug, your plug points are different. What is all of this like? Why is there no one particular like USB-C standard?
The first question,
like a 3-pin plug standard.
If it's the half current, it's an issue of power quality. So we discussed what voltage is, the potential to move, and then the current, the actual thing that moves. Then power is essentially the multiplication of voltage and current. So then finally you have energy. So how all these are related is, for example, you have something called 10-watt bulb in your house, yeah.
Okay.
And say it's operating at 240 and it takes some amount of current, so that when you multiply both, it gets 10 watts, yeah. And then you use it for 1 hour, then you get 10 watt hour. That's the amount of energy that you have used. It's actually always power multiplied by the time that you use it for is energy. 10 watt hour. Let's say you use it for 10 days. So it's 100 watt hour. Say you have 10 bulbs like that. You're using it in your house. You have 1,000 watt hour, which is 1 unit of energy, which is for which you pay 5 rupees. Now, for that 10 watt bulb to glow properly, it needs 240 volts and whatever current it demands there. But if it does not get 240 volts, it only gets 200 volts or something like that. That's probably will cause what you call as half current. Does not get enough what it needs. That's called power quality. So it's essentially, I'm expecting
Okay.
this, give me this. But many times it's not possible. And that reasons are extremely technical. And people try to solve it in different ways. It's getting solved. So that should not be a
Okay.
problem once you have. I mean, it definitely is one of the most important things. It's just annoying to see the light flickering up
Yeah.
every time. So that it's
So what about the socket
the
question?
socket question
Like,
is,
why
I
different
think, it's
countries,
just being
different
done.
time
You
and
can
stuff?
see that Apple is right now finally accepted that in European Union it will have the same USB-C type socket for charging. Finally agreed, but it
Only
took,
for the European Union, not for the rest of the world.
no, it's only the policy is only in the European Union, I think, but I don't know whether they're going to do that for the rest of the world or not.
Okay.
So essentially, what's the problem? Because it took like 5 years or maybe more than that since the proposal came about, and now finally it's a regulation. Similarly, so it's very interesting because the point of electricity, it happened at the same time in different continents, right? In Japan, you can see one part of Japan using 60 hertz, much like United States of America. The other part,
What is hertz?
hertz is the frequency.
Oh, the measure of frequency is called
Yeah.
hertz.
So in one part, the energy system uses 60 hertz frequency, so it's called a 60 hertz system. The other part, it's called 50 hertz system. And Japan has two things. Why? Because one part of Japan bought its generators from USA, the other part bought from Europe. And it never thought it's
God.
going to be one national grid or that sort of thing. And now they are struggling. They have something called.
So do they have two separate sockets, like two separate chargers for one part? Like, how does that work?
No, perhaps, yeah, perhaps. I mean, sockets doesn't matter. I mean, you obviously
Okay.
have adapters and everything. It's just a point of connection.
Okay.
But the idea, what I'm trying to convey here is, it was never uniform because it happened at the same time in different continents, right? I mean, there is someone else had figured out radio the same time. Marconi had done it in Europe. So, but somebody beat him to it. And also it was a way for these Protestants and whoever split away from the norm or their European masters, as they used to call back then, for especially America, when they moved away. Science and electricity for them was a tool to say that, oh, there is empirical evidence to everything, and it's not an act of God. I mean, society was primarily predicated upon this Holy Roman Church and that sort of thing back then.
Okay.
And then this proved otherwise. It was a tool for everyone to be different in their own way and prove others wrong. So when electricity came about, communication was by letters and stuff. You had to carry one letter from England to United States by a ship. And one of the first uses of electricity was to improve communication. And about telegram and everything. Yeah, we can still see some of those telegram poles in our country as well. So even before this light bulb and all the wonders of electricity that we see today, it was communicated. And once communication improved, then everyone was on the same page. But all the sockets, I think, were created before this communication became an important thing. And everyone went about their own way and was never standardized. And not just in metric system, nobody can follow even after standardized. So it's just a cock up.
So two questions now. So why is Japan in trouble if it has two different?
They can't scale anything. They can't develop anything into a bigger scale because they don't have a national grid now. India made a national grid almost 8 years back, I think. And now it's called the national grid. Before we had two grids, the north, east, west, that was one, and the south was another. And remember, there was a blackout for 3 days in North India sometime back in 2012, I think. And once the grid collapses, it collapses. That's it, and it will take 3 days to get back up. So unless you get support from the
Damn.
south, and when you connect everything to one, then you have south. You can easily do that load shedding. You can take the power off from somewhere and then connect somewhere else. That sort of thing.
Okay.
And not allow it to collapse.
Makes sense.
Yeah. What's the second question?
Oh, the second question. Wait. I forgot what the second question was.
That's all right. The audience will never know.
Oh, no, now I got it. So the second question was, yeah, we spoke about telegrams or whatever, but the precursor to any form of electrical communication started with like the Morse code, right?
Yeah.
So what is that like? How?
No, it's quite.
How did?
So you talk about electromagnetism, right? So you pass current and becomes a magnet, and
Okay.
you suddenly stop current and stops becoming a magnet, right? So
Right.
attraction, repulsion, goes up, down. So it means tut, 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 tut. Essentially, that's Morse code. And Simon Morse encoded it, saying that you get a sound this much for this duration. It means it's an alphabet or a number. If you get a pause or a silence, then it's and then that's how Morse code works. So and
This is basically on off, on off, on
that
off.
on off can be enabled towards long distances if you have wire. So for example, if you switch on here, which means you pass the current and then the thing becomes a magnet. You can do it in the same room, but you can also do it for 1 kilometer apart or 10 kilometers apart. So you only need to switch on and off. And of course, the wars time, people try to hack and everything.
But that's so fascinating, right? This on off became ones and zeros, and that ones and zeros became what we're doing right now, intercontinental podcasting.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it's just crazy. It's crazy. I still can't wrap my head around all of this. All of this happened in 130?
Yeah, it's
120 years?
It's just 100 years plus. What's interesting is they tried to lay one cable between England and, United States of America. And the cable snapped in between. Then they improved the design and then laid another cable. It took 16 hours for one message to pass, I think, from the Queen to then President of the America. And
do you know what they spoke?
It's something, some bullshit, obviously. It is there somewhere. I can't quite remember what it is. But what these formal communications are like. It's not like WhatsApp, bro. So,
So 16 hours.
Yeah. And then later the marine team went in and then found the snap cable and joined it. And it was kind of a Herculean task to bring that cable which was underneath the sea. So you have to imagine that people actually dived into that sea because the captain in the previous ship, he had recorded the location. But it's not just one pinpoint location in it. So it's just a huge area. And then somebody dived and then found the cable, brought it onto the ship deck and tried to join it. And when they bought it, it snapped because they couldn't hold it together. It went back into, just amazing. And that's the start of communications. Yeah. So
the transatlantic.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen that actually, the transatlantic cable in the museum in Birmingham. One piece of it. Just a piece of it.
But well, so we leave the viewers with all of this, to let it sink in. Let that sink in. Morse code, on, off.
Yeah, just
1-0.
Yeah, one thing about the net zero. So I could think about carbon capture and storage. That's one. The other one is very obvious. Afforestation. Plant more trees. Italy. Just thought came into me. Yeah, that's one other way to do it for net zero, I suppose.
But what was this? But still, just to wrap this thing around my head is just crazy, man. Would you think the Simon Morse or Faraday or Edison would have thought that whatever they were building upon, is eventually going to be used to stream, ultra HD 4K porn to a 15-year-old's bedroom? Like, it's madness. But at the same time, we've sent a man to the moon. which wouldn't have been possible without any of this as well. It's just crazy that we as a civilization have reached whatever we've done in 100 years because of this one discovery, which has led to multiple inventions. Electricity. It's just beautiful. Just that holistic thing is just beautiful and fascinating. But well, thanks for talking to us, Vinod. Do you have any last thoughts to share?
Oh, that's pretty much it. I think let's look forward to a greener future.
Yeah,
So that I
because
don't want to be locked inside my own house because the temperature outside is too hot.
yeah, because what was also interesting is that you told me that all of this comes with a cost. There is a cost involved with electricity, but at the same time, you tell it's fundamental to people. So I think we've got to expound upon this as to how we can make this energy economics work. Like have people access electricity and, to power whatever they have and be part of the economy. But what do you do about the cost? That is for another episode. And for all the documentaries that Vinod mentioned, we will have links to all of that in the description of this talk. But for now, that's it, folks. Have a nice one.
Thank you very
Cheers.
much.